Hello, I'm Beth Aguchi, and I am going to give you a 15-minute tour of a 15-month program in which 15 small or rural libraries collaborated with community members to really re-envision their physical spaces for active learning. So a smart space is a space in a smart space. Community members collaborate with the library. They are actively participating with the library to design and think through what is needed in terms of spaces and services in the library, and to create a space for active learning that is participatory and is ripe for social engagement. So OCLC's Web Junction program, with funding from a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, launched the Small Libraries Create Smart Spaces program with 15 libraries to achieve this goal toward active learning. And what we've learned from this program, from the success of these libraries moving into active learning spaces, we are convinced can be applied and practiced by a library of any type or size. If these small libraries can do it, any library can do it. So first we had to really think about what is active learning, and active learning is a term or a practice that's applied widely in K through 12 education, but what is it in libraries? Well, really, active learning is about this shift in libraries from passive to active engagement with their community members. So it has some very key characteristics around being participatory. It's different from a formal educational environment because libraries offer informal atmosphere where community members, anybody, can get together and they can participate together in learning in ways that are really meaningful to their own lives. So let's look, what does active learning actually look like in a library? Well, learning essentially happens by doing. So learners literally get their hands dirty as they co-create, they design, they build, they grow things together, and it's the power of that hand-brain connection. Learning is social. Everyone in the community can participate. So this and really successful active learning space creates and invites social connections so that DIY, do it yourself, turns into DIT, do it together. Learning is interconnected, which means no matter what age or what type of space, whether it's an early learning space where children or babies and toddlers engage with early learning and play toys, or a digital media lab where teens just pick up and mess around with equipment and create their own learning paths, or a makerspace for adults, which becomes an entrepreneurial playground. The learning is really interconnected and co-created, and no matter what type of space or what the audience is, the challenge is constant. So learners are together exploring new things and discovering solutions and really coming together to find their own learning and create their own learning. So for our program, we had a challenge to be able to accommodate and define a process that would accommodate these 15 libraries from across the country in a way that would really meet the variety of the communities and their needs. So we kept this process intentionally very open-ended and not trying to shoehorn any library into a specific makerspace or some kind of active learning solution, because even though all of 15 of them met this definition of a small or rural library, every community is unique. And this is important because at the heart of the process is this idea that the community is the expert. This is a key principle of placemaking from the Project for Public Spaces, who was one of our implementation partners. And it really looks to the community to understand what are their needs and interests. This process starts with the community, but it doesn't stop there once you've sort of understood and gone out. It continues all the way through planning, designing, and even delivering programming in the space. And I think at the heart of this is the idea that you're going out and you're listening to the community. The listening is a really key element. This is often why traditional surveys don't quite hit the mark, because they tend to start from an assumption that the library knows what choices to offer to the community. So we explored a number of tools and strategies for doing this really genuine community listening, from traditional surveys, which some libraries had done, to more open-ended kinds of approaches like wish trees and dot boards. And in some communities that we were working with, the community was so small that it was really a matter of just going down to the local coffee shop and listening to what was going on. This is an example of a wish tree, which is one of the discovery tools, and it was used by the Madison Public Library in South Dakota, a very small rural community. And they asked two very open-ended and non-library specific questions. What do you like about Madison, and what do you think would make it better? And this is to help your community audience get past their own assumptions of what a library is and what a library might offer, so they can think more aspirationally and think more broadly about possibilities. We had so many amazing testimonials about the sort of the shift in thinking and the transformation that happened just in this community discovery process. This is one quotation from a participant. She said, "Asking the community to get involved in co-creating space was a win-win for us, and we will utilize this community buy-in perspective with all our future projects." And I'm going to read another quotation, because I think what we heard back from our participants was just so gratifying and reaffirming of the process. This other participant said, "The depth of the community surveys and discussions was a real eye-opener for us. I had previously thought I knew what my community wanted, but now involving my board in these discussions gave them a whole new insight into what I had been trying to convey to them, and for them, hearing it from the people directly made a huge difference." So I think the best way to really get the idea across of the transformations is to show you some examples. We have 3 examples from our participating libraries. Starting with Cornwall Public Library in New York. This was actually the largest community served, and they had done a long process of community conversations with all numbers of stakeholders, and they actually had done a whole sequence of changes in the library, and our Smart Spaces project fit very nicely into it. So this is what it looked like before. This is before transformation. This was their reference area. So this is the space that's being transformed. This, and this. So you can see it's a space right on the other side of the far wall is the main entrance, and it's a space where patrons were basically not invited, kind of only reserved for staff. And I just want to point out this this book-shaped, whoops, got a little too close, this book-shaped pillow, and that little floor space was the former teen area. So they decided to do a teen space, and the really inspiring story at Cornwall Public Library was the contributions from the community who donated time and energy, from a design firm who designed the whole space and furnishings, a teen duo who painted this incredible mural on the wall, and I love the story of this guy, the carpet layer, who wanted to give back to the library because the library had made a huge impact in his life. And that's all we know about the story, but he dedicated the time and energy to do that on his own. And when patrons now come in the entrance and turn the corner, they gasp because of this vibrant transformation with the beautiful mural. The teens own the space. They formed an impromptu study group which meets regularly, and they do really fun activities like this escape room with clues planted around the space. And next we go across the country to Ferry, Idaho, population 1,200, a much smaller community. They had a very small footprint with their library, so they had actually tacked on a trailer space on the back of the library building, and which is what we're seeing here, and this is where they're housing their VHS collection, but it was a dead space, it was a backwater. I want you to note the 2 doors on either side of that long bookshelf, because that was the first major construction change that they made. They closed those doors off, made a central entrance so it would just be more inviting and a better use of space, laid some beautiful new flooring, and voila, transformation. Jennifer Trail, the dynamic library director of this small library, started by buying this shelf unit with the storage, the very colorful storage bins, and she used that to inspire her color choices for the rest. Very flexible modular tables so they can rearrange and reconfigure, and a ton of active learning programs going on in this space, more than I can begin to talk about now. And our third library is the Hot Springs Library. It's on the Appalachian Trail, smallest community, only 560 population, but because they're on the trail, they get a lot of trail hikers who come through. So they had a cramped, dark space. Children, teens, adults were all piled on top of each other, and they had a storage room, which was underutilized. So they wanted to make a better space for everybody, but particularly for teens and children. And they got into a demolition project. As they started tearing things apart, things got more complicated than they had envisioned. I love this. This is Melanie Morgan, the director, as she is hauling out a wheelbarrow full of trashed books. She wears her hard hat. Good question. But these are beautiful photos, and it makes the transformation even more dramatic. And it so seamlessly integrates the storeroom into the rest of the library that you would never know. The vertical post is what marks the location of the previous wall, but they did a wonderful job with the designs on the walls, the color, the furnishings flow. They're again very modular, so you can do a lot of different configurations. They have this wonderful interactive play wall for children, and a ton of activities going on in the space. So there's a whole lot more to this project, and I want to particularly direct you. I'm just going to hold up a postcard. Look for these postcards. I want to direct you to the friendly URL, oc.lc/smartspaces, where you will find a whole lot more detail about the amazing transformations from all 15 libraries, starting with, we have some fantastic videos. There are 3 of them live now. We're going to do some more. And they're just highlights. They're very brief, like 1 to 2 minute highlights of some of our fantastic libraries. We are working on transformation stories, which are visual tours, journeys through the transformation process that all of these libraries went through. So a lot more detail in terms of like the discovery tools they used, the challenges they met, and more about the programming that they're now implementing with the community involvement. And then third, and that's actually what this postcard is mostly highlighting, is we have put together a self-paced course based on the process that we led the libraries through, so that any person, any library can actually follow the learning path that our libraries led. The course consists of, there are actually 3 courses. The first 2 courses are now live and accessible. It's so you can begin the learning journey, and the 3rd course will be available shortly within the next month. We're thinking of it as a learning experience because obviously our library spent 15 months. The community discovery piece of the process is really vital and a crucial part of that transformation, not just in the physical space, but the thinking about how the library connects with its community and how the library invites the community to really be a continuing partner. Because if you have a community that feels they are really integral to the process of what the library is doing and creating, you have community members who are fully invested in the success of the library. I want to thank our sponsors again. We're always supported by OCLC, and we had a generous grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Thank you.